Hmm. Hello, welcome, namaste, beautiful soul. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, which is an exploration of our hips, particularly the anatomy of our hips. So I hope you have your yoga mat ready and some props as well. We'll be using at least a bolster, perhaps a strap, and perhaps a block. And sometimes the body is feeling a little slow, a little tired. Maybe it's a long day and you just want to do a few stretches before you go to sleep. Maybe we simply woke up and body's feeling a little sluggish. And during those times, the body doesn't want to do a bunch of big sun salutations and challenging arm balances. Sometimes the body just wants to lay down, just wants to relax. So this entire sequence that we'll be doing, this entire exploration that we'll be doing, will be in the supine position, also known as the lying down position. So without further ado, let's lie down, shall we? So I hope my mic is having some nice audio for you to listen fully to me during this session. And to start, we can lie on our backs and then heel toe your feet wide, at least wider than your hips, and perhaps all the way to the width of your mat. And then notice what movement needs to happen for the knees to come together and touch. So it's not that big of a movement, but it is a nice one for most bodies. So this subtle movement is internal rotation. It's a fairly rare movement in yoga, but it's important to note what movement it is. So for example, if you do cue somebody to bring their knees together in this position and they're not able to, that does point out some restriction in internal rotation. And if there isn't that relaxation of the knees coming together, you can always strap the knees together. And let's just take a few moments to arrive in our bodies, taking one hand to the belly, take the other hand to the heart. Feel the rise and fall of your belly breath. And tune into the heart space. Spending a few moments here, settling in. Nothing to do, nothing to change or improve. Just embracing all that you are. And being with whatever is real and true for you right now. And before we bring any other movement, just take one more deep, nourishing, long, and slow breath. And if this is internal rotation, let's explore external rotation. Starting by bringing the feet back together And we're going to do this movement very, very slowly. Like 10 breaths slowly to come to a butterfly position. So gently, slowly, mindfully, let the knees fall out wide. And recognize you're in control here. So as we do get into and wake up the hips, at any point, any challenging emotions begin to arise, then pause. Pause the activity, pause the video, take a break, get up, walk around. Take care of yourself as you need. So I'm about halfway. My knees are about halfway out wide, and they are continuing a slow descent all the way into a butterfly position. Almost there. And we'll return just as slowly as we went in. So again, take about 10 breaths to gently, slowly, mindfully bring the knees together. You might notice a bit of quivering with the muscles at the inner thighs. That's perfectly normal. Simply breathe through it as we slowly bring the knees back to center. Almost there. Okay. Back to center. And we'll do it again. And just notice anatomically what's happening. We have 3 types of contraction. So as the knees gently fall out, this is our eccentric contraction. So the muscles, the adductors along the inner thigh, are controlling the movement. They're controlling the descent of the knees. And they're lengthening at the same time. So this is eccentric contraction, a lengthening contraction. And then once your knees are out wide, we can feel an isometric contraction, which means the body doesn't move. The muscles just engage, which we can do by using our glutes. So rather than just let gravity bring the knees out, activate the glutes and actively press the knees out and away just with your own muscles. So the outer thigh muscles activate, the glutes activate in order to bring the knees further out, and you'll feel a deeper stretch in the inner thighs, in the adductors. So that's a simple example of isometric contraction. The muscles contract, but the joints don't move. And then gently release. And slowly back to center. And as we bring the knees slowly to center, this of course is concentric contraction. The knees gently coming back together, the adductor muscles gently bringing the knees back to center. And once the knees are at center, just notice any changes in the body, changes in the breathing rate, changes in the sensations in the inner thighs. And let's take our bolster underneath the hips. This is a really lovely way to start by lifting the hips up. Technically, an inversion is anytime the heart's over the head. So even right now, we are inverting. And we'll find some very subtle hip extension. So if you just extend the legs out in front of you, because your hips are up, heels are going to be a little bit back. And we'll find ourselves with some subtle opening of the front of the thighs. Nothing too big. You might not even feel anything at all. But this subtle hip extension is really nice for the hip flexors. And then gently, mindfully, and slowly bring the feet back to center, bending the legs and planting the feet. And with the bolster underneath of us, notice it gives us a little bit of a posterior tilt of the tailbone. And that, for most bodies, allows a legs up the wall to happen without even using the wall. So now that the tailbone is tilted back a little bit, then the legs tend to nicely hang out at 90 degrees. And notice this is hip flexion, yeah? We're at 90 degrees of hip flexion. So you might feel a stretch, an opening in the hamstrings. The hamstring might be restricting your movement. You know, you might do a little bend in the knees if the hamstrings are somewhat restricting in this pose. But this simply adds to the inversion qualities and benefits of the pose. And then we can bend the knees again and let the feet find the mat again. We'll keep the bolster underneath the hips, because as we just learned, it does help us not have to work so hard to keep the legs there up in the air. And let's find our figure 4. So bring the left knee up and then place the left ankle on the right thigh. And then draw the left knee away from you. So there's some knee flexion here, there's some hip flexion as well. But the most important thing to notice here is the external rotation of the hips. And then we can bring the right knee up. And this might be a little bit more comfortable than figure 4 normally is because of the bolster underneath the hips. And we can interlace fingers around the right thigh or perhaps the right shin. And notice where you feel this stretch. So it's typically the deep external rotation poses that gets us into the deep 6, right? This deep, the 6 deep hip muscles. So you will probably feel it more in the hip joint area than the thigh here. And we can even add the hamstring stretch to this pose. So just extend the right leg up and do the same idea. Interlacing fingers around the thigh and getting the best of both worlds, both the hamstring stretch and the external rotation of the left hip. And let's switch to the other side. Releasing right foot down to the earth and letting the left foot find the earth. Bringing your right knee up, crossing right ankle on the left thigh, and hugging left leg in. And you can interlace fingers around the left thigh or the left shin. And we can breathe and tune into the deepest sensation you're feeling in your body. And keep nice, even breaths. And let's add the hamstrings, shall we? Extend the left leg up. And keep the fingers interlaced around the left thigh. And breathe. And let's release. Release the leg, release both feet to the mat, and we'll release the bolster out from underneath of us. So press into the feet to lift the hips up. Take out the bolster and gently lower the hips back down. Let's heel toe the feet wide and let the knees come back together. Take one hand to the belly and one hand to the heart. So we've explored hip extension, hip flexion, external rotation, and internal rotation. And there's a pose that does both internal and external, internal on one hip and external on the other. It's very simple. Take the arms above the head. We can grab our elbows. Keep the feet wide, so keep the feet at the width of the mat. But let both knees fall to the right. The right knee will draw out, and the left knee will draw in. And here we have both rotations. The left knee is internally rotating even more, and the right hip is externally rotating. And we can even find a slightly deeper expression by taking the right ankle on the left thigh. And not so much pressing into the knee, but just letting the additional weight of the right leg give some gentle opening. And feeling into this pose in your body. And let's transition to the other side. Releasing the right foot. Bring the knees back to center. And other side. So let the knees fall to the left. Notice the internal rotation of the right hip, external rotation of the left. And then for some gentle encouragement, left ankle on top of the right. And continue to hold the forearms above the head. And gently release the left ankle and bring the knees to center. Another pose we can explore is the eagle leg twist, because this is one of the few poses that involve adduction of the hips. So bring your right foot to center and cross your left leg completely over the right. And then in order to keep our spine centered down our mat, it helps to shift the hips first. So lift the hips up, shift them to the left side of the mat, Then when you bring the knees up and let the knees fall to the right, you'll be in the twist. And I'll just move my little headset mic real quick so we don't lose signal. And feel the twist. And of course, feel how everything is connected, right? So even subtle movements of the legs will bring out different parts of the body. And gently come back to center. Let's do the other side. Right foot all the way over the left. So we got the knees stacked and the hips will go to the right. We lift the knees up and knees go to the left. And we gaze to the right. And gently come back up to center and unravel the legs and bring the hips back to center. Next, grab your strap. Let's find the hamstring stretch with the strap. Let's start with the right leg. Taking this strap around the right foot, extending the right leg up, and taking the left leg out in front of you. So this is really important to recognize about forward folds. The movement happens in the hips. A lot of people think they're folding more forward when they round the spine, which is fine in some poses, but in a lot of the poses, we don't want that because it will add tension to the low back. So this is one of my absolute favorite positions to bring my new students into, because by keeping the back flat, we know we're not adding any tension, and then we can free up hip flexion in the body in preparation for those other poses. And we really don't need to adduct too much at all to get into the outer thigh, the TFL and IT bend. So take both ends in the strap into your left hand. Bring the leg just a little bit more into flexion. And then draw it a little bit to the midline. And you shouldn't need to turn too much to feel a stretch move on the lateral side of the thigh. If you're going all the way into the twist, that probably just means your ilium, your pelvis is coming off the mat. But we really want to stay in the center, stay flat on the ground. And then gently come back to center. And we'll do the whole abduction. So draw the right leg all the way out to the right with both ends of the strap in the right hand. And notice at what point your left hip starts to come off the ground. So when the legs are bent, we tend to get into the smaller adductors. So our butterfly from before, gets a little bit more into the pectineus and the adductor brevis. Now you'll probably feel this a little bit more along the inner thigh, perhaps all the way to the knee. And then gently coming back to center. And let's do the other leg. So bring the left knee in, strap around the left foot, extend the left leg up towards the sky, and just breathe into the hamstring stretch. And be sure to keep the left hip grounded. And then just a little bit of adduction. So both ends of the strap into your right hand. Pull the left foot closer and draw the foot close to the midline. So a little bit across the body, and you don't need too much. And then the abduction. So we draw the leg out to the left as far as it goes until the right hip starts to come off the mat. And we feel the movement, we feel the stretch move into the longer adductors, the brevis, not the brevis, the magnus and the longus and the gracilis. And bringing the leg back to center, taking the left knee in. Let's just do one movement for the SI joint. So bring both knees in, cross the ankles, and just move the knees in some gentle circles, kind of the same circles together. And you'll feel the sacrum make this little circle on the earth. A nice movement for the SI joint where the sacrum meets the ilium. Switch the cross of the ankles and go the opposite direction. Coming back to center, switch the cross of the ankles and release the feet to the mat. And just notice what joint motions we need to come into Shavasana. So we extend the legs and we take the legs wide, so a little bit of abduction. And then we externally rotate. The toes fall to the side. And we can rest here for a few breaths, honoring everything you just did, letting the body integrate everything that you just did. Feel free to stay here as long as you'd like. Feel free to pause the video or to begin to wake up. Interlace the fingers above the head. Bring the knees in. Roll onto your right side in the fetal position. And gently press up to a seat. And perhaps those simple movements also made Sukhasana or easy pose a little bit more easy and accessible in the body. So thank you so much for sharing your practice with me today. Sometimes we say that yoga is 99% practice, 1% theory. Another way of putting it is yoga is participatory. It is experiential. It is direct knowledge. I could tell you all about the taste of chocolate. I could tell you all about chocolate, and you could research everything there is to know about chocolate. But true insight is gained through the taste, through you tasting it. So whatever you are learning in your yoga practice, integrate it into your life, taste it, experience it, participate in it. Learn about your own body, this beautiful reflection of the universe, this microcosm that is a reflection of the macrocosm. The entire universe is within you. So by getting in touch with everything within, we in turn connect with everything without. Thank you again for sharing. Namaste.